you're here because you like to push the FileMaker platform, and because you like to push it, there are sometimes things that you wish it could do. You wish it could be faster. You wish it would have more support for drag and drop interactions. You wish that it could be made of washable plastic tiles. I have good news for you. No, first, I just want to, before I get into intros, I just want to do a little bit of level setting. Again, this is the last session. I want you to let go of all your APIs, all of your transactions, all of the stuff that you learned. Just let it go. It's going to come back to you. We're going to chill out a little bit and have a little fun together. So we're going to do a little level setting, just see where you're at mentally. Does anybody know what the sound a dog makes? Not a trick question. Again, very last session of the day, plastic tiles. Very simple. Arf. Good, good. Unless you're from France, in which case it's wa.
Mine's scores.
Yeah. All right, next one. Cat. Does anyone know what the sound is cat makes? Again, yes. All right, you're with me. We have achieved the intellectual level of this talk. I'm so psyched. All right, good. Okay, I'm going to throw up a sound on the screen, and I want you to guess, or at least in your head, think about what animal makes this sound. Oh, ant. Oh, ant. Have you heard this sound? This is the sound. I'll tell you when you might have heard this sound. You're at the end of a meeting with a client, and you've done the presentation. You've shown them, you've demoed the features. They've given you their notes, you've given them your notes. You're ready to go to lunch, you're about to close the Zoom meeting, and somebody, probably your client, utters this sound. Oh, and this is the sound a commitment makes. Here are some other commitments that I've recorded in the wild. This one was uttered by Peter Vinogradov, Senior Developer at Proofgeist. Let me look into that report and get back to you. Yeah, I should have time to add that button today. Again, Peter Vinogradov, Senior Developer at Proofgeist. This one wasn't Peter Vinogradov. This was to Peter Vinogradov. Paid by December 31st. The IRS letter. I should call the dentist about this toothache. Again, Peter Vinogradov, Senior Developer at Proofgeist. Yeah. I'll deal with it when I get home. Great idea. Let me write that down. So the point I'm trying to make is that commitments come to us in countless little exchanges throughout the day with our clients, with our colleagues, with ourselves. And like pets, like the animals that we invite into our house, they have different needs. Some need to be let out. Some need to be fed. Some need to be given their antibiotics at 1 o'clock. And let me, before I break this analogy any further, or beat it to death, I just want to say that commitments, we invite them into our house like pets. We invite them into our lives because they promise to bring us joy if they're properly taken care of. If we can, do them, live up to them. So the question, the theme of this talk is going to be about how do we turn our commitments into something lovable and cuddly, and how do we connect it to FileMaker? So this is what these commitments that I just mentioned might look like now. Pay the IRS. Let me look into that report. That's the client. Let me get that button for you, pricing button. That brilliant idea that I wanted to write down and didn't write down. It's an idea for pita bagels. We're going to talk about power of the pita bagel at some point. So yes, we'll tell you how this works, and we are going to connect it to FileMaker. This is a productivity talk. I consider myself a productivity nerd. I do not consider myself to be overly productive. I just love I love the subject of productivity. I'm fascinated by productive people, and I'm fascinated by the human mind and its limitations and the chemical soup that goes through our brains and how we become productive. But for me, when I talk about productivity, I don't mean coding more features in less time, because that's insane when you bill hourly. She got it. She knows what I'm talking about. Bill that lunch. It's about making what I produce more real, feeling more connection to what I produce, and drawing more satisfaction from it in little bits throughout the day and in the long term. Also, I want to just say, like, brains are different. All of our brains are different, and brains change. So what works for one person might not work for another. What works for you today might not work for you tomorrow. So these kinds of things, it's all about experimenting. All your productivity hacks, all your productivity things, it's about experimenting, it's about having fun, it's about getting in touch with what works for you. It's about finding joy in the things that you produce, and it's about being intentional about what you can produce and what you can fit into your day and what you're willing to attempt. So a bit about me, I started working, I know I'm gonna get off camera, and I feel bad that the people watching this video aren't gonna see me, but I have this weird thing, I like to see people, I like to interact and talk. I started developing FileMaker solutions in about 2001. I was a teacher, and bit by bit, I was picking up clients, other schools, and at some point, this is probably a very common story that you're probably all familiar with, at some point I had to leave my day job and start doing this full time because I loved it. But I knew that I had a lot of organizational challenges. I'm sort of like subclinical ADHD, I can't even pronounce it. Like, I needed tools to get more organized if I was going to be my own boss. So I got this book. I don't know, anybody familiar with this book? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Hold on. Who's familiar with the book? All right, you get a special tile. I'm just kidding. You can grab those tiles anytime you want. We have like 20,000 tiles at Proof, guys. I don't know why they were so many. But this is Getting Things Done by Dave Allen. Dave Allen's sort of considered the godfather of productivity nerds, right? This is the Bible of productivity. I still haven't finished it. So please, no spoilers. But I did get through the meat of it. I got through the techniques, I got through what he was talking about, and there were some really important takeaways. And I'm going to distill it down as much as I can. 1, loops. The things that we are committed to, the things people ask of us and the ideas that we have and the things we want out of our lives play in little loops in our head over and over again. And every time they play, they consume cognitive resources. They waste energy that you would otherwise have for creating, for coming up with ideas, for getting inspired. So what do you do about that? You capture them, you get them out of your head and into a system that is low friction, handy, available, at the ready, and it has to be a system that you trust, that you know you're not going to lose track of. Because if you think you're going to lose track of it, it's going to just become another loop, right? That fear of losing track. So that is that whole book. I've just distilled it down, except for the last like 20 pages, which I never finished. And I'm distilling it even further. This is like the peak Dave Allen quote. Your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. Get them out. All right. This is where we're going to talk a little bit about some brain chemistry. I am not a neuroscientist. And so this is going to be a little bit pop psych. If some of you are neuroscientists and you are offended by any misinformation that I spread right now, please talk to me after the session. Dopamine. If you read anything about the brain and about motivation theory, about focus, about attention, dopamine is going to come up over and over and over again. It's a neuromodulator, which means that it's not just for transmitting information between neurons. It controls entire systems in your brain. It lowers certain things, raises certain things. So it controls a lot of things like focus, attention, motivation, drive. It's responsible for a lot of motor function. I guess the best analogy that I would use for dopamine is it's like a choir conductor, right? It tells the basses to sing a little quieter, it tells the altos to sing a little louder, and when everything is working the way it should, sorry, this sound is like, I'm like, I don't have enough dopamine to not focus on it. When everything is working as it should in your brain, it is like listening to a well-conducted piece of music, right? You feel connected to it, you feel you're paying attention to it, it has your focus, and it makes you happy, right? That's why you hear a lot on the internet about dopamine hits, right? Because it does make you happy. It makes you happy because it does reinforce behavior. Dopamine also correlates directly with working memory. So working memory is different from short-term memory. Working memory is what your brain is thinking about right now. The words that I'm talking to you, things on the screen, the buzzing in your pocket from your cell phone, that's your working memory is in charge of all that right now. And the amount of dopamine that you have available is going to correlate to how much working memory you have. There are some, there are some easy tests that you can do. I'm going to put some links up on my site that you can do to gauge roughly how much dopamine you have based on how much working memory you have. The amount of dopamine in your system and the way it works for you is going to be heavily connected to mindset. So if you... Oh no, Lindsay! Okay. If you... Sorry. If you've heard anything, there's kind of been trendy, like on the internet about cold showers, cold water therapy, cold submersion. Some of you are nodding. Some of you are like, I took a cold shower this morning, right? It's horrible. It's terrible.
Didn't have any water.
So you took what's called an involuntary cold shower.
No, there was no water.
Oh, there was no water.
So
all right.
I used a lot of powder.
So that's called it's a dry shower. Yeah. But the thing with cold showers is like if you run a cold shower and you walk into it intentionally, you are going to get a release of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, but you're also going to get a huge release of dopamine that is going to last for a long period of time. If you suddenly fall into somehow, let's say your shower suddenly goes cold for whatever reason, and you weren't expecting it, you're going to get all the stress stuff, but none of the dopamine, right? So mindset is really, really important. And we're going to talk about how some of these techniques with TileMaker and with the database I'm going to show you are about building mindset for the things that you do. So maintaining the narrative of what you're doing through things like journaling and note-taking. Okay. Lindsay? All right. Willpower. Again, it's not just dopamine. There's a lot of other chemicals. You've got noradrenaline, which is responsible for alertness and attention. Glutamate, which is responsible for your prefrontal cortex, neuroplasticity, learning. Serotonin, I'm sure any of you who've had any kind of bad moods have probably heard about that. Cortisol, like I said, is a stress hormone. So there's a lot going on without sort of getting into it too deeply. A great shorthand is willpower. It's a great book by Roy Baumeister, John Tierney, that basically kind of goes into that a little bit, but really talks about the way, essentially the takeaway from their work and their survey over the research is that you have a certain amount of willpower throughout the day. And you wake up with that, and that's what you have to focus on your work. It's what you have to fight distraction on your phone. It's what you have to resist the chocolate cake in your fridge. It's what you have to not yell at your kids when they're being jerks. It's what you have, all of those things are drawing from the same well of willpower. And so this is going to be about how do we preserve our willpower for the things that we want and not waste it on things that we don't need to waste it on. So decision making is one that draws your willpower down. Does anybody have to make decisions throughout their day? Or are they made for you? Right. Like probably 1 trillion decisions at a time. So we're going to talk about ways to cut that down, cut down that cost. Task switching, going from one task to another, spinning up all the things that one client needs, where their database lives, what their project is doing, versus another client, versus that phone call that interrupts you. The cost of task switching, nobody needs to, Gary Keller did not need to say this. You guys all know it, you feel it internally. Task switching is a bummer, draws you down. So we're going to talk about how do we address that. All right, let's get into TileMaker. All right. I'm a big fan of whiteboards. One of the things Dave Allen says is if you've got an idea in your head, get it out, write it down. So when I went to business for myself, I bought, 5, 10 whiteboards. I had them all over my house. My wife was not a big fan. We're not married anymore. These are not coincidences. But I loved it because, if I lived in a room like this, these windows would be all covered with just ideas, and there'd be dry erase markers everywhere because I just love the idea of get it out of my head, get it onto something that I can see and touch and move around. These are things that are good about whiteboards. I don't know, I was supposed to drop that earlier. We'll move on. I like to write stories. I'm a fiction writer. I play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, so I'm always making up stories, and I need help plotting out characters, plot points, objects. The classic tool, if you ever see on TV a television writer's room, they've got Post-it notes all over the place, right? Post-it notes are great, but they kind of accumulate, and they crinkle, and they stick together, and they sort of suck. So I, after a lot of searching and buying random things on Amazon and trying things out, I ended up with plastic white dominoes and wet erase markers. I used them for storyboarding. They were great for characters, plot points. I could stack things together, put things in, rearrange really quickly. Suddenly, this was like this magical thing. And all my whiteboards are not mounted, so the magnetic part wasn't really important. But I was able to sort of rearrange things, move things around, and I suddenly realized that I could do so much more with them. They were great for idea capture in general, really great for decision making. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And really great for planning my day. First, I just want to address a question that you probably have. Aren't we really just talking about chunky, loud, obnoxious Post-it notes? Yes, absolutely. But I think we've all experienced instances where a slight change in form factor can unleash a wide range of possibilities. Anybody get it? Right? Okay. So unlike Post-it notes, TileMaker tiles have weight, sound, they line up perfectly, they're compact on my desk, they don't stick together, and they're washable. So let's talk about how to TileMaker. I'm going to switch to Zoom. Oh, or am I? Okay, cool. All right. So the first step in tile making, let me just make sure I can do the tabbing. Okay, this is why I can't maximize. Lindsay. Lindsay's my room host. He's amazing. He's missing. He's missing. And I think the screens get mad when he's not here. Okay. All right. So the first thing, this is so maddening. All right. Okay. First thing we do, capture. I'm going to unplug this and then I'm going to replug it. Right? That's the universal fix.
Yep.
It's good. We're good. All right. So capture. We take a tile. If you have one, if you have your starter kit, what's that? Oh, my video turned on. It's not. Yeah, take your starter kit if you have one, and write down a commitment. Can be anything. Can be something on your mind, something that you learned that you want to follow up on. I learned that I want to talk to Lindsay about the screen. All right. Because I don't want, he's going to want to know about this. So I write it down. I put it there. It's not going to go anywhere now. That's on my desk. It is now, it's clutter, but it's intentional clutter. I've got other commitments. There's that pita bagel idea that I really want to develop. And it's been kicking around in my head. I need to give it a little attention. I definitely have to send that check to the IRS. Super corporate publishing. My client really wants me to look into that pricing button. Promised them I'd do that. Smitty High School. We've been working on this web forms project. It's a bear. There's a lot of pieces to it. So we're going to do that. Smitty High School, they generate a lot of work. They also, their term reports are due today. So I'm going to write that in red. Super corporate publishing. They also want me to tweak their nightly reports. So that's another little task. At some point today, I'm going to need to have lunch. And I got to walk Kevin. Kevin's my dog. So these are the things, these are my internal commitments that I start my morning with. Right, just capturing at this point, just getting them out. All right, switch back. So far, the screen's been good. Play. All right, there's a couple of things. These are toys. All right, they're dominoes. Have fun with them. Make them into a thing. Knock them over. It's a fidget spinner with meaning, right? You can build a little tower, knock it down. It's, just occupies some idle space. Appreciate that you're not gonna lose track of these. They're gonna take place on they're gonna take up some room on your desk, so you can trust them a little more. Again, that's important. We talked about that with Dave Allen. Notice the sound they make, feeling. They're engaging your tactile sense. Dopamine is highly responsive to multiple sensory input, right? It controls your motor input. So it is good to be able to touch things. That's why we like tactile things. Notice also how easy it is to rearrange stuff. And
Okay, I think your camera's not.
Oh.
Are we supposed to be seeing that?
Oh yeah. Well, there we go. Yes. I mean, I just was taking sounds. But they're super rearrangeable. It's not an accident that these are arranged on a clock, and we're going to talk about how that works in a second. Okay, chunk. Because these are, this is going to be an organizational tool, wherever you can. Like I have this web forms project. Work on web forms. It's too big, too vague. So maybe let me chunk it up into smaller tasks, right? If I, take a minute to go through your internal commitments and see if you can, instead of like, hey, I want to work on this, write down the next thing, right? So I just finished writing an API handler for this web forms thing. So I need to debug it. So I'm going to write that down. Debug handler. I also, the form builder UI that I have in FileMaker is total garbage. I need to clean that up. So I'll spend a little time cleaning it up. All right, so I can take this web forms tile, I'm going to move that aside. Now I've got some nice, smaller, concrete actions. Or as Kevin Malone would say, many small time make big time. All right, now we're going to talk about decision making. Here's the thing about working memory. Working memory can hold about, I don't know, they say like 5 to 7 chunks, 3 or 4 different things in your head at once. But all the things that you have to decide what to do, you know, your priorities for the day, they have different dimensions to them. The doability of the task, how interested you are, how urgent it is. All of these dimensions, all these valences kick around, and it becomes really hard the minute you try to compare each of those dimensions to everything else that you have to do. Your working memory gets quickly overloaded. But your brain can easily take any 2 random things and immediately give you a gut reaction about which one is more important, which one belongs now in the time that you're trying to fill, right? It's going to weigh all those factors, the doability, the the urgency, all those things. So I see that I've written this in red. This is really important. The UI thing can wait. I'll put that in at 9 o'clock. Grab 2 more things. That's that pricing button, the IRS thing. You know what? That's going to take me 20 seconds to pay the IRS. Let me just do it. I'm just going to put that in there. Maybe I'll put it at a tilt. Maybe I'll put idea, pita bagel. That's an after work thing I can work on. But this nightly reports thing, I definitely want to do. Lunch and Kevin, we're going to probably do those around the same time. Talk to Lindsay. Again, that can wait. Debug the handler. So if you look at things just 2 at a time, you can prioritize without taxing your cognitive resources. You can also, you feel free to like go through and just do this, do several rounds, have winners and losers. It doesn't take that much time, and it's kind of play. And by the end of it, you're going to have a nicely organized stack of your priorities for the day. And you can repeat this throughout the day to reprioritize, because it's easy and things move. So again, how urgent something is, how doable it is, how interesting, all of those dimensions, if you can compare them just 2 at a time, it's going to save your cognitive energy for important things. We'll quote about decision making. Again, Dave Allen, just the master of pithy productivity quotes. All right. Now let's plan. So before I can lay these out, let's say I've prioritized these. Lunch and Kevin are not really priorities. They're just going to happen. Oh, camera. Thank you. Hold on a second. I actually do have to stop my presentation so I can see my notes. Okay. So maybe I've got to check in with a client at 11. So what I've got here is I've got a calendar that with a dry erase sheet on it that I can just write my appointments in, the things that are immovable, right? I got a Slack from Mike this morning asking for a 2 p.m. meeting. So maybe I'll just put that in there. Got a co-dev session at 3. Mike's probably only going to need half an hour. Put my co-dev in. Again, lunch is flexible. Maybe I'm going to eat lunch while I walk Kevin. I don't know. We'll work it out. But now I can just start to lay these things in depending on how I've prioritized them. Debug the handler, maybe here. Work on that pricing button. I'll just take a look at that in between my meeting with Mike and my co-dev. Oh, I get a ping from Todd saying that the Auto FMS has a new version, needs some debugging. So again, I don't have to really interrupt much. I can just write it down. We'll find a way to squeeze that in. Maybe, maybe not. One of the things that this lets you do is immediately see what you have time for, right? Somebody's going to throw something at you throughout your day. It's going to happen constantly. And you're going to want to say yes, because we want to say yes to people. But having this right next to you on your desk, readily available in a frictionless, easy to use way, easy to move things around. If you can't squeeze it in, then you got to say no, right? Or if you can't pull something else out and put it in, you got to say no. But this at least lets you do that in a more honest way. All right, here's the best part. This is just a jar of water. I sent that check to the IRS. It's done. I didn't send all of it. They're gonna write me back. But I drop it in, and it's a little hard to see on camera, but the ink just dissolves. It melts away. That task is done. It is a it is a small dopamine hit throughout your day that lets you just remind you that stuff is getting done. It's important, again, talking about mindset. Mindset helps you sustain that dopamine throughout the day. Say, okay, I am getting things done, things are moving along. Especially for digital people, we're not building houses, right? We can't always see what we're getting done. All right, get back to this. Task switching. Again, Gary Keller didn't need to say that. We all know. Boom. All right, this is what you came here for. FileMaker stuff. All right, so again, I'm going to switch to a demo file. Okay, so this is a solution that I built a little while back to help me cut back the costs of switching between tasks. So in this, I have essentially these are it's launchers, right? So pita bagel, my pita bagel project. Again, I'm trying to create a hybrid of a pita and a bagel. And as soon as I find some time to work on it, maybe it's in the evening, whatever, I want to get back to where I left off and what's next, right? Well, so first I have to learn how to make pitas and I have to learn how to make bagels. So I got a pita recipe here, I got a bagel recipe, and I have a chat GPT thread about how to make why breads make pockets, right? So I've done a little research here. And the very next thing, I got to order some malt syrup. So right away, when I sit down, because of the last time I worked on this project, I took these notes, I have these links set up for myself. I've done myself this favor where as soon as I sit down to work on this project, I know what I need to do next. I got to order some malt syrup, I got to go, look at this bagel recipe, and then we'll start planning. Okay, I have a client, Smitty, they're a high school, and we're working on this web forms project. Again, when I have time to work on it, wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to think like, okay, what was the URL for that database? What server was that on? How do I get into their portal? What's the login that I need for that? What's the VPN? All of that I can pilot in here into my launcher. So I can just go through these things, click that to open the web forms database, click that to get into the portal, click this to get into ClickUp, which is maybe where I've got some more formal notes on the project. So, there's my, so it just pops me into these things. So this is a task switching tool. Nope, not there yet. So then once I had this tool and I started using these tiles, I don't know if you were at the last Auto Enter Live conference. It was a virtual conference that a bunch of us did. It was a really fun talk. This fellow Javier Dura did a talk on NFCs and getting them to work with FileMaker. So here's my NFC reader. And here's my web browser. Stand by. So, screen. There we go. Oh, come on. All right, never mind.
Just use Raycast.
I should just use Raycast. That's Eric's going to give a talk after this closing keynote about Raycast. All right. I have an NFC card. Did it do it? It didn't do it. It's because my NFC app isn't open. All right. So I have an NFC card. I drop it on my reader. Boom. Takes me to whatever website was encoded in this NFC. It's super easy to encode things in an NFC card. And NFC cards cost nothing. Super cheap. I have NFC cards for my Spotify playlist. They look like little records, right? So like my holiday playlist, put it on like a record player. Well, you can't hear it because there's no audio. But they're kind of awesome. And you can use them because, as everybody knows, FileMaker, you can get into FileMaker and launch scripts with a URL. So if I can connect these NFC cards to something in my FileMaker database, then maybe all I need to do to switch from one task to another is move this tile 2 inches onto the reader, right? So we're going to do it and try it. All right. I have here, this is an NFC. Let me switch to my Zoom so you can see. This is it's a little clip that I 3D printed. You can use something like that. I'm going to put I have the STL for this up on my Substack, which I'm going to send a link to later. So you can print your own, but if you have a 3D printer. But you can also buy these on Amazon, super cheap, and they work pretty much as well as these tiles. You know, they're not quite as cute and chunky, but they're NFC enabled. So I print these, and this has a link to the Smitty High School record in my TileMaker companion database. So if I got to work on the reports,
which app do you want to open?
whichever one. Surprise me. So I just put it on there, and so now I can use it for my planning, I can use it for my prioritizing, my decision making. But when I'm ready to, like, I get interrupted with a phone call, I deal with that. When I'm ready to get back into working on Smitty High School's term reports, I do that, and my database pops me into Smitty web forms. I do have a harvest integration that it opens up because I hate like forgetting, like working on a project for 35 minutes and realizing I haven't built it. So as soon as I launch into here, I go to this harvest thing and it reminds me there's a little API integration, but we don't have to go into that. But now I'm here. I open the database, I open the ClickUp, and I can get into the project with minimal, there's still some cost, task switching costs, but these techniques will help me cut down some of that cost. And again, I'm able to do it with just a little bit of kind of moving things around. I do have, probably don't have time to demo, but I do have, there's an iPhone, an iOS FileMaker Go version of this that I can use for if I don't have a card reader, and I do have a web server. It'll just basically, it just reads it, puts a record on there that this listens for, and then takes me there. So it kind of acts as a card reader, but it will also write cards for me. But these are pretty cheap. You can get these on Amazon, and again, my Substack is going to have a shopping list. What's the next thing I want to show? Oh, yeah. So there's a couple of other elements of this app that I just want to sort of look at before we wrap up and take questions and get into discussion, because I do want to hear some of your own like productivity questions and thoughts and challenges. So a couple other things that I do to sort of help with my dopamine management. One, I have this continuity thing here. There's where we left off and very next thing. Really try to get into the habit of when I'm leaving a project to just put something in each of those, right? And that's why all of these have a little VNT tag. It means that there's a very next thing in there. There's something that needs my attention. So try to establish continuity to go from one thing to another, so that when you're pulled away, you can come back and at least have some breadcrumb that gets your brain back on track, gets your working memory fired up. The other thing is is logging throughout the day. So every time I click on something, it makes a journal entry in my journal. So, these are pretty, I've only used this demo database a couple times today, but every time I click on something, it just puts a little bit of information, right? And this way, at the end of the day, I can kind of give a summary of what I did. Build a narrative, feel that sense of accomplishment, and kind of start to generate some momentum for the next day. Go back to my sequences. Sometimes I turn this on so that it has like a chatty mode, or I think by default it's silent. But now if I click on it, it kind of nags me. It's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm saying, I'm working on the term reports. Doing myself a favor so that later when I look and say, okay, what did I do? It's there. And if I happen to forget to harvest, the harvest API crapped out last week and I lost a day's worth of stuff. And this journaling helped me reconstruct it without me having to do anything extra. It's kind of handy. I can always add a log item, maybe I'm like heading off to lunch. And it's just going to add it to my journal. Quick 3. This is a tried and true technique. There's lots of productivity people will tell you to do this. You're struggling. It's the morning. You're like, I just am nothing. I'm at nothing. I got no dopamine. I cannot get myself to work. Quick 3 just says, all right, just write down 3 things. They can be dumb, right? Get coffee. Pick playlist. Open database. It doesn't even have to be spelled right. Just 3 things, right? I go and I get my coffee, and when I'm done, I click the checkbox. All right? It's stupid. I promise it's stupid, but you're going to get a slight little tick of dopamine. And that progress is going to start to build momentum. And then you're like, okay, well, I finished those 3 things, so I don't know, let me do another 3 things. Eventually, you're not going to need this. Eventually, you'll be coasting. So that is a handy tool for me. And it does, I do have them journal. So like when I have these, but they're really small. Like coffee, like this. It's kind of dumb. And then I have for my journal, I also have like a week thing so that I can see across the week what's going on. These are some notes that's from actual data. But so if I go over to this week, it's got All right, so I can see there's a thing called day theming where you say, okay, this day is going to be all about meetings. And this day is going to be all about project dev. And if you kind of set a theme for your days, it helps you kind of, when you're sitting down with your tiles, it helps you say, well, this is a meeting day. So I don't have to, I'm not going to do all this stuff. I'm going to try to get these meetings out of the way. So day theming is kind of a popular trend in productivity stuff. But so anyway, this file, a demo version of this file is available on my Substack. Just gonna kind of wrap up with a few conclusions and then take some questions and discussion. Commitments are like pets. They take work, they're annoying, they're destructive, they pee on the floor, and they are also rewarding and lovable if they are treated right. We only have so much willpower. It's not infinite. It's replenished every day by rest and food. It is easily taxed by decisions and task switching and nonsense. Our brains are for having ideas, not holding them. We like tactile things. We like touching things. We're basically monkeys. We are dependent on dopamine for everything. Find a system that is, get things out of your head and into a system that is trustable, easy, at the ready, and tactile. I hope that's the right finger emoji I chose. If it's, I can't, my glasses.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
All right, got her. I was like, damn, at this angle, I don't know. This is a great quote from my colleague Mike Lee at Proofgeist. Treat your future self like someone you're in a loving relationship with. This is wisdom. I don't think he came up with the concept, but I like the way he phrased it. So what I did is I made a tile with an NFC link on it for when I get back. This is waiting for me on my desk. It goes to a ClickUp note where I'm corralling all my little to-dos, all my things that I've thought of through the conference, and a few little like love letters to myself, like, hey, you did it, you did your you're talking, it was terrible. So that when I get back to my desk, right? And so some of these behaviors are that. They're about taking care of your future self, right? And this is a great framework to think about that, right? Like when you set up the coffee for the morning, you're not doing it for yourself in that moment. You're doing it for your future self because you love them. So it's a kind of a sweet thought. So all the things we're talking about, these very next thing notes, the journaling, it's all about taking care of your future self and building that momentum with the things that you love to do. So in your starter kits, there's a link to this that you can have, go ahead and photograph if you want, but it's basically going to have some links to some stuff. There's a couple of really good resources on brain chemistry if that's your jam and you want to kind of nerd out on that. I don't know if anybody here listen to the Huberman Lab podcast? Yeah. I mean, this man really likes to take a cold shower and hurt himself, but like he's just, he's kind of a masochist, but he's a neuroscientist at Stanford, so I assume he knows some things, and his podcast is very listenable, and there's a lot of really, really good content and links out to all kinds of things about creativity. I've selected a few that I really like, and I linked them on this page. It's a great way to start out on that. Yeah. And then, again, links to these, how to print these clips, shopping lists for this kind of stuff, for these things. Of course, you do not have to buy these because we have a trillion of them. So see Martha Zink after the talk and say, I want 100 dominoes. She will find them for you. Is there any questions? Anything folks want to talk about with productivity, how you're using FileMaker to boost your productivity, anything like that? Sir?
I use ClickUp for all my.
Okay.
Honestly, you saw that. I use ClickUp for my project management, and I've integrated it. I know API might be a bad term to use in this meeting or the session, but
that's okay.
I've integrated ClickUp with FileMaker for my ticket tracking system for my clients, and I've been using it for a few years, and I think it works well. So.
Yeah. No, I love ClickUp, and I definitely think that this, plastic tiles alone aren't going to do it, but the immediacy. The tactile quality and having it there, it's a little redundant, and I'm not afraid of being redundant with things, right? I might have something in my hand that reflects something in ClickUp, but there's nothing wrong with that. They serve kind of different functions, Also, ClickUp has so many damn buttons. Just the new release.
For some things, but I didn't want to build my own solution. I didn't want to roll my own anymore.
Right.
So I'm just like, let's just
Yeah.
do something like that.
No, but-
anyone else use ClickUp for? I don't know if anyone.
Yeah, who uses ClickUp? I mean, our whole company uses ClickUp.
Yeah.
We do love it.
And works easy to integrate with FileMaker with the API.
Yeah, it's got great mobile stuff.
Yeah.
But again, as FileMaker developers and as people with brains that are constantly evolving, it's great to have a tool that we can code ourselves, that we can get our hands into. Because like this solution, I change it every day. I'm like, no, I don't need this kind of reminder. I need this kind of reminder. So it's fun. It's fun to kind of hack it yourself. So, anything else?
How long have you been working with it? I love productivity. It's awesome. I love Huberman Lab. And I'm just like, it's so hard to be like consistent over time. And I know you said it changes, but have you worked with this long or?
These tools I've been using for about 2 years.
2 years.
And they do evolve in the way that I use them. They evolve, but they really, and I go in and out, right? There are weeks where I never touch them. Where I've just like locked into one project and I can kind of, I'm in the zone, I'm in the flow, and it's not that hard. This is really for when when my life is chunked up and when I need to prioritize and I need to kind of take things in hand, that's where they really come in handy. And right, they don't have to work all the time. They just have to work, they have to be there when I need them. They're also great for baking. I do a ton of baking. And like, you got all these processes. I made croissants the other week and I was like, okay, well now I got to laminate, now I got to fold, and so having a clock and being able to space things out was super handy. And then also very satisfying to be able to wash them off and be like, okay, another 2 days and these croissants are going to be done. Anyone else?
I have a question. So I haven't worked with tags, and so how much effort is it involved? We use UTrack, and I know that we can integrate because we've integrated a lot of things, FileMaker, with our project management system. But I'm curious about, because we work on so many different things with different people and such, the effort to set those up in order to have some information transfer in is...
To set up an NFC tag to transfer information from one thing to another.
Yeah.
So you can store anything on an NFC tag. I only store URLs on them. So, and I have the software set up so that when it reads it, and your phone is kind of going to do this too, when you put it next to your phone, it's going to just immediately launch whatever the URL is.
Right.
Right. But
and we can create URLs in UTrack that will generate tickets, etc., things like that.
Oh, okay.
But
so if you wanted to have, let's say, something that a tile that you could put on an NFC card that would generate a ticket for a given client.
Would be nice if it could read what I wrote on the tile.
Oh, the text that you're actually like handwritten. Oh, well, now we're this is. You know what? You can do it. Use your phone, OCR it. I believe in you.
I have a goal.
Yeah. But then you can just use paper. You don't need a tile.
I really like everything that you shared about the tactile nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
I am a huge fan of little cards.
Okay.
Not Post-it notes. Again, they lose their sticky.
Yeah, it's the saddest thing in the world when a Post-it note loses its sticky.
Makes my monitor.
It's like a rose losing its petals.
Yeah, it makes the monitor look like a flower.
Yeah.
It's rude, and but I have my desk covered with all these little, like, I don't know what size that is, like Rolodex card size, if anyone remembers.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Cards, business card size cards that I write on and can erase and so on. But they're like everywhere. And they become so numerous that it's difficult to do what you were doing with the tiles.
So a little dirty secret is my desk will sometimes overload with tiles. And because it's a bit redundant with some of my other systems, I'm okay with declaring amnesty. And I take them and I put them in a big bucket of water and they all just wash away. It's not accomplishment. It's just being forgiving to myself and being like, you know what? We got to start over, salt the earth. And then I start with clean tiles and I go through my tasks and, there's no system that's going to just keep going perfectly, right? Every system, like even Dave Allen's system, required a weekly 1 hour review of all your folders and all your paper and all your stuff. And that if you didn't do it, it fell apart. Because I lived that system for a couple of years. And if I missed the weekly review, it fell apart. So this on its own is not going to handle it, but you have to be willing to give yourself that grace of like, you know what, these have done their purpose. I'm going to grab the ones that are really, really critical that I know I didn't back up in some other system. Maybe I'll put those aside and the rest go in the bucket, start fresh.
I also wanted to say that I enjoyed your opening image with the month and the days in the files. It reminded me of a book I read in the early 80s when I was young and naive about how to get your housework done. And they had this whole system that used index cards and index card file. And you would have a day, you'd have every day of the month, you'd have every month, and then you'd have every week, and then every day of the week. And so you would create an index card for, dust the china hutch and decide how often it had to be there. And you would look at it every day and check, was it and it was very much like what, our reminders and electronic systems.
Dave Allen had a thing where it was called, in fact, there's a website called 43 Folders that's like devoted to his system because it's about 43 folders. There's one for each day of the week and one for every month. And you kind of move them along. It's a very complicated system, but it is kind of awesome when you have it firing on all cylinders. Your brain becomes hyper efficient. Yeah. But it's.
Well, I had a lot of fun creating it. And I used it for about a month, and then I decided I really don't like housework.
Right. There you go.
It wasn't.
Put other things in there.
I didn't have the motivation to
put things like, put other things in there. Put things like have some pizza, watch some Netflix.
Irish bar.
That's right. Hang out in my Irish bar.
All right. Anything else we want to, sir?
So I use business cards to do my task stuff, but I group them and I put them in something that I've called a task totem.
Ooh.
Which is,
I want to hear more about this.
The task totem is some representation of the category. So if it's a customer, like I have a customer they have a recycle business. So their task totem is an aluminum can with the top cut off. And I put their business card tasks in the can.
All right, so now you have a physical representation.
Yes. And so I can put all the task totems on the shelf with the cards in them, so I don't have to worry about them. But when I want to work on something,
you just grab it.
I grab it, I have an NFC tag on the can.
Oh, okay.
And I scan it and it brings up what you're showing.
Oh, fabulous. I love it.
So instead of having a little thing on every one of your
tiles,
you can have a bucket.
That's for the product. So that's what I do. Yeah, I have I'll have one of these for each client or each project if it's a really big client. And that way I can move them from one tile to another. And this can get washed and this just goes back into its little shelf. But yours is cooler because it's representation.
But I have a 3D printer and I'm an engineer and I design things. So I'm making all kinds of creative.
That's awesome. See, I just started on 3D printing, so I made this kind of little remedial like tile holder with the markers and stuff. I'll put the print for that up there as well. It's not great because this falls out, but you can definitely, if you design a better one, I want to see it. No, I love that because I love again, it's the idea of attaching these physical objects semantically to the thing, because the more you can do that, the more meaning they have, and the more the more your brain is going to respond to you interacting with them. So yeah, it
also helped me get rid of piles of paper in my office.
Yeah,
because I would keep a pile knowing that was something that needed to be worked on, and if I put it away, I would forget about it.
Right.
So I replace every pile with something smaller, my task totem, and then I file the pile away. And when I actually am going to work on that, I go find the pile and get out everything and work on it.
We might have the same ring.
Yes, we do.
All right, I love it. I love it. Sir?
Kind of on that like same topic of like a tactile thing, which I like totally like love. Do you think there's something digital that's like come close for you, like for that, or is that just not something?
A digital tool that's come close to doing that? No. I mean, FileMaker, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's the we all do it because FileMaker gives us that natural dopamine rush, that instant satisfaction of accomplishment, right? And so that's kind of the tool. But in terms of like just a bare bones tool that out of the box will provide this kind of like, hey, I can just the immediacy and the touchability. I've tried it even on iPad. I can't find something that kind of does this. So no.
What about with like obviously there's like the Apple Vision Pro now, which is expensive, but like I guess just like
If anyone would like to get me an Apple Vision Pro, I will absolutely. I'll make it my mission.
try. How many tiles will it take in exchange?
What I want is I want Apple to turn these into like, you know, touch sensitive gyro so that we can like do stuff to them. That would be amazing. You buy, I mean, they would probably cost $100 a piece, but if we could do it cheaper or give them to me for free, then that would be amazing.
And I wanted to record what you write.
That's right. That's right. All right. We've just created a new category called tactiles. Apple, if you're listening. All right.